You know what's absolutely insane? Last Tuesday, I walked into my favorite deli in Brooklyn, Giovanni's on Court Street, and ordered the same turkey club I've been getting for 3 years. The guy behind the counter, Tony, he knows my order by heart. Extra pickles, no tomatoes, the whole thing. I get to the register and he says, "That'll be $14.50. I blink. "Tony, it was $12.75 last month." He shrugs. "Inflation, my friend. Everything's going up." I pay, I leave, I eat my sandwich. And then something clicks in my brain that makes my stomach turn, and it's not the extra pickles. If a sandwich went up 13% in 1 month, what's happening to the $30,000 I have sitting in my savings account right now? That question led me down a rabbit hole that completely changed how I think about money. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why every single day you keep cash sitting in a savings account, you're essentially lighting it on fire, slowly, invisibly, but very, very effectively. My name is Mike, and 3 months ago, I thought I was being financially responsible. Today, I realize I was committing financial suicide. Let me show you what I discovered. So after that sandwich incident, I became obsessed. I started tracking prices everywhere I went, and what I found was absolutely terrifying. My gym membership at Equinox in Manhattan, up from $215 to $235 a month in 6 months. My car insurance with Geico jumped from $187 to $224 monthly when it renewed in October. Even my Netflix subscription, something I barely think about, went from $15.49 to $17.99. But here's what really broke my brain. I went back to Giovanni's every single week for a month. I ordered the same sandwich, and I documented something that sounds like I'm making it up, but I promise you, this actually happened. Week 1, $14.50. Week 2, $14.50. Week 3, $14.75. Week 4, $15.25. In 1 month, that sandwich increased by 75 cents. That's a 5% increase in 30 days. I sat down with my laptop at my kitchen table in Queens and I did the math. If that rate continued, and economists were saying it might, that sandwich would cost $18.43 by December 2026, nearly $20 for a turkey club. But then I realized something even worse. It wasn't just about the sandwich. I had $30,000 in my Chase savings account, earning 0.45% annual interest. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was being safe. I was watching that number every month. $30,000, $30,011, $30,023. It felt like progress. But if inflation was running at even 6% annually, and in 2025, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis published data that inflation averaged 3.4% from 2021 to 2024, but consumer prices for food, energy, and housing, the stuff you actually spend money on, were up nearly 23% cumulatively. And analysts at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan were both projecting 2026 inflation between 4.2% and 6.8%, depending on economic conditions. I remember sitting at my table, looking at my bank statement, and feeling this wave of anger wash over me. I'd been working my ass off. I'd been responsible. I'd been saving. And all that discipline, all that sacrifice, it was like trying to fill a bathtub while someone was draining it from the bottom. I was working harder and harder and somehow getting further behind. That's when I realized saving money isn't actually saving anything. It's just watching it die in slow motion. Let me tell you about my friend Marcus. Real guy, lives in Philadelphia, works as a graphic designer. Marcus is the most disciplined person I know with money. While I was blowing my 20s on bottle service and sneakers, Marcus was saving. Every month, like clockwork, $1,500 into his Wells Fargo savings account. He did this for 7 years. 7 years.
By 2024, Marcus had $147,000 saved up. He was so proud of himself. He'd send me screenshots of his bank account. "Look at this, Alex. This is discipline. This is what financial responsibility looks like." And I believed him. I thought Marcus had figured it out. Then I saw him last month at a coffee shop in Center City, Philadelphia, and he looked like someone had died. I asked him what was wrong. "I finally talked to a financial advisor," he said. "You know what she told me? If I'd invested that money instead of just saving it, even in something boring like an S&P 500 index fund, I'd have over $230,000 right now, maybe more." He'd lost over $80,000 in potential gains by being safe. But here's the part that really messed him up, and this messed me up when he told me. She calculated that because of inflation, his $147,000 in purchasing power was actually equivalent to about $121,000 from when he started saving in 2017. He saved for 7 years and went backward. This is the big lie we've all been told. Save your money, be responsible, put it in the bank. And look, I get it. Our parents and grandparents lived in a different world. My grandfather in Detroit, he put his money in a savings account at Comerica Bank that paid 5 to 7% interest in the 1980s. When inflation was 3%, he was actually making money by saving. But that world is gone, completely, utterly gone. Today, the average savings account interest rate in the United States is 0.46%, according to the FDIC. Meanwhile, inflation is projected to hover between 4 and 6% through 2026, based on Congressional Budget Office estimates. That means for every $10,000 you have saved, you're losing somewhere between $350 and $550 in purchasing power every single year. You're not treading water, you're drowning. And the thing is, banks know this. They're not stupid. While they're paying you 0.46%, they're turning around and lending that money out at 7% for car loans, 4.5% for mortgages, 18 to 25% for credit cards. They're making a fortune off the gap between what they pay you and what they charge borrowers. You're not a customer. You're the product. I spent an entire weekend going through my financial history, every bank statement, every year since I started working in 2016. I calculated how much money I'd deposited into savings. I calculated the interest I'd earned. Then I calculated what that money would be worth today, accounting for inflation. The number I came up with made me physically ill. I'd effectively lost $8,400 in purchasing power by being responsible over 9 years. $8,400. That's a used car. That's a down payment on a small condo. That's 3 months of rent. Gone. Evaporated. Stolen by the invisible inflation thief while I patted myself on the back for being responsible. But here's what really made me angry. It wasn't my fault. Nobody taught me this. Not in high school, not in college, not in any job I'd ever had. We're taught that saving equals good, spending equals bad, and investing equals scary and risky. We're taught to fear the stock market, to avoid risk, to keep our money safe. But safe is just another word for guaranteed to lose. Hey, quick thing before we continue. If this is blowing your mind right now, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about real financial education, the stuff they should have taught us in school but didn't. I'm breaking down one major money concept every single week. And if you're realizing right now that maybe everything you thought you knew about saving was wrong, you're going to want to see what's coming next. Also, drop a comment and tell me, how much do you have in savings right now? You don't have to give me exact numbers, just ranges. Under 10K, 10 to 50K, over 50K. I'm curious who's watching this and how much money is currently sitting in accounts losing value as we speak. All right, let's get into the solution, because this story has a happy ending, I promise.
I realized what was happening, I kind of spiraled for a few days. I was angry. I felt stupid. I felt betrayed by every financial advisor, every parent, every teacher who'd ever told me to save for a rainy day. But then I met someone who changed everything. Her name is Dr. Patricia Chen. She's an economics professor at NYU, and I met her at a seminar in Manhattan on economic forecasting. After her talk, I cornered her at the reception and basically unloaded everything. The sandwich, Marcus, my lost purchasing power, all of it. She listened patiently. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You're right to be angry, but being angry at a system won't change your situation. What you need to understand is that money isn't meant to sit still. Money is a tool, and tools are meant to be used. In an inflationary environment, cash is a melting ice cube. You need to turn that ice into something that grows. I asked her what she meant. She pulled out her phone and showed me a chart. This is the S&P 500 index, basically the 500 largest companies in America. If you'd invested $10,000 in 2015 and just left it alone, by 2025 it would be worth approximately $38,000. That's a 280% return over 10 years. My jaw dropped. But what about the risk? What about crashes? Yes, there are crashes, she said. 2020 saw a 34% drop in March, but by August, the market had recovered. By 2021, it hit all-time highs. The people who lost money were the ones who panicked and sold. The people who stayed in made money. Over any 20-year period in U.S. history, the stock market has never produced a negative return. She let that sink in, then continued. Let me put it another way. Inflation is guaranteed. If you keep money in cash, you will lose purchasing power. That's not a risk, that's a certainty. Investing has risk, yes, but it also has the potential for growth that outpaces inflation. You're not choosing between risk and safety, you're choosing between different types of risk. And historically, the risk of investing has been far, far lower than the risk of doing nothing. This completely rewired my brain. I'd always thought of investing as gambling, like going to a casino in Atlantic City and putting everything on red. But Dr. Chen explained that investing in broad market index funds is actually the opposite of gambling. When you invest in the S&P 500, she said, you're betting on the American economy. You're betting that companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Coca-Cola, and 495 others will continue to innovate, grow, and create value. Over the past century, that bet has paid off about 10% per year on average. She showed me more numbers. From 1928 to 2024, the S&P 500 averaged a 10.13% annual return, according to data from Yale economist Robert Shiller. Some years were down, like 2008 when it dropped 37%, but other years were up huge, like 2013 when it gained 32.4%. The key was time. The longer you stayed invested, the more those ups and downs smoothed out into steady growth. Think of it like this, Dr. Chen said. Imagine you planted an apple tree in 2015. Some years the weather is bad and you get fewer apples. Some years the weather is great and you get tons of apples. But over 10 years, you have an orchard. Meanwhile, your neighbor who kept his apple seeds in a jar, he still just has seeds. Probably fewer, actually, because mice got into the jar. That metaphor clicked for me in a way nothing else had. Saving was keeping seeds in a jar. Investing was planting a tree. And the inflation thief was the mice eating the seeds. I left that seminar and immediately opened up my laptop. I was sitting at a Starbucks on Broadway, drinking a $7 latte that probably would have cost $4 3 years ago, and I decided right then I was done being a victim of the inflation thief. But I had no idea where to start. So I did what any millennial does. I started Googling how to start investing, best investment apps, index funds for beginners. And honestly, I got overwhelmed. There were thousands of articles, all saying different things. Some said invest in crypto, some said real estate, some said gold, some said tech stocks. It was paralyzing. Then I remembered what Dr. Chen had said. Start simple, start broad, start now. So I opened an account with Vanguard, one of the biggest investment companies in the world, founded by a guy named John Bogle, who basically invented the index fund. The whole process took maybe 20 minutes. I sat there in that Starbucks sipping my overpriced latte and transferred $5,000 from my savings account into a Vanguard account. Then I bought shares of VTSAX, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund. This single fund owns tiny pieces of almost every publicly traded company in America, over 4,000 companies. When you buy one share of VTSAX, you're buying a microscopic piece of Apple, Google, Amazon, Home Depot, Starbucks, Tesla, and thousands of others.
I clicked complete purchase, and just like that, I was an investor. And then I felt nothing. No rush, no excitement, no fear, just nothing. I went back the next day to check on it. My $5,000 was worth $5,017. Cool. A week later, $4,923. Oh no. But then I remembered this isn't about tomorrow. This is about 2026, 2027, 2030, 2040. So I did something that changed everything. I set up automatic investments. Every 2 weeks on payday, $500 automatically transferred from my checking account to my Vanguard account and bought more VTSAX. I didn't think about it. I didn't watch the daily price. I just let it happen. That was 3 months ago. Today, I've invested $11,500 total. The current value? $12,240. Now that might not sound like a lot, a $740 gain in 3 months, but here's what's wild. If I'd kept that money in my Chase savings account earning 0.45%, I'd have about $133 in interest. By investing instead of saving, I made 57 times more money in 3 months. But the real magic isn't what happened in 3 months. It's what's going to happen over years and decades. Dr. Chen had shown me a calculator at that seminar, and after I started investing, I went back and played with it myself. Here's what I found. If I invest $500 every 2 weeks, $1,000 a month for the next 20 years, and the market returns its historical average of 10% annually, by 2045, I'll have approximately $687,000. The amount I actually put in? $240,000. The growth from compound returns? $447,000. But here's the kicker. If I just saved that $1,000 a month in a savings account earning 0.45%, I'd have about $253,000 by 2045. That's a difference of $434,000, almost $500,000. That's not gambling. That's not luck. That's math. But let me address the elephant in the room. What about crashes? What if I invest right before everything tanks? Great question. I asked Dr. Chen the same thing. She told me about a guy, and this is a real case study economists love, who had the worst timing in history. Let's call him Bob. Bob invested $6,000 in the S&P 500 at the market peak in 1972, right before it crashed 48% over the next 2 years. Bad luck, right? But Bob didn't panic. He didn't sell. He just held on. By 1982, 10 years later, his $6,000 was worth $10,800. By 1992, $38,000. By 2002, $81,000. By 2012, $173,000. By 2022, over $485,000. Bob invested literally the worst possible moment, and he still made 80 times his money over 50 years. Now imagine if Bob had kept that $6,000 in a savings account from 1972 to 2022. With inflation, that money would have lost over 86% of its purchasing power. His $6,000 would have the buying power of less than $900 in 2022 dollars. This is what I mean when I say the real risk isn't investing. The real risk is doing nothing. So let's talk about 2026 specifically, because that's what this video is really about. Why is 2026 going to be brutal for people who keep their money in cash? According to projections from the Federal Reserve, the International Monetary Fund, and private firms like JP Morgan and BlackRock, inflation is expected to remain elevated through at least mid-2026. We're looking at rates between 4 to 6% in most developed economies. The reasons are complicated: supply chain issues, labor shortages, government spending, energy costs, but the result is simple. Your money is going to buy less in 2026 than it does today. That $14.50 sandwich from Giovanni's, it'll probably be $16 or $17 by next December. Your rent, your car payment, your groceries, your utilities, all going up. Meanwhile, savings account rates are staying low. The big banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they're still offering accounts with interest rates under 0.5%. Some high-yield online savings accounts might get you 4 to 5%, which is better, but still barely keeping pace with inflation. Let me give you a concrete example of what this means. Let's say you have $50,000 saved right now. You're proud of it. You worked hard for it. You're keeping it in a savings account earning 0.5% interest. In 1 year, you'll earn $250 in interest. Cool. But if inflation runs at 5%, that $50,000 will lose $2,500 in purchasing power. So your safe savings actually cost you $2,250 in real value. Now let's say you'd invested that $50,000 in a total market index fund and it returned the historical average of 10%. In 1 year, you'd earn $5,000 in growth. Subtract the 5% inflation, and you'd still gain $2,500 in real purchasing power. Same amount of money, same year. One approach costs you $2,250. The other makes you $2,500. That's a $4,750 difference in 1 year from one decision. Multiply that over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you're talking about life-changing amounts of money. This is why I say that keeping cash and savings in 2026 isn't just unsuboptimal, it's financial suicide.
Look, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you to take all your money and dump it into the stock market tomorrow. Everyone's situation is different, and you should talk to a professional about your specific circumstances. But what I am saying is this: if I can figure this out, you can too. 3 months ago, I thought investing was for rich people, for finance bros, for people with MBAs. I thought the smart thing was to keep my money safe in a bank. Today, I realize that safety is an illusion. The only real safety is growth that outpaces inflation, and the only way to get that growth is to invest. Here's what I want you to do after you finish this video. First, open up your banking app right now and look at how much you have in savings. Really look at it. That number you're so proud of, it's shrinking every single day. Second, calculate how much purchasing power you're losing. Take your savings balance, multiply it by 0.05, that's 5% inflation, and that's roughly how much you're losing per year by doing nothing. Third, educate yourself. You don't need to become an expert, just learn the basics. Start with simple index funds, VTSAX, VOO, FZROX. Google them, read about them, understand what they are. Fourth, open an investment account. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they're all good. It takes 20 minutes. Do it this week. Fifth, and this is the most important one, start small and start now. You don't need to invest your entire savings. Start with $500. Start with $100. Hell, start with $20. The amount doesn't matter. What matters is that you start. Because here's the truth. The inflation thief doesn't care about your excuses. He doesn't care that you're scared or confused or waiting for the right time. He's eating your money right now while you're watching this video. You can keep feeding him, or you can starve him by putting your money to work. I went back to Giovanni's last week. That turkey club, $15.50 now, up another quarter. But this time, I didn't get angry. I just smiled, paid, and walked out, because I know that while Tony's sandwiches are getting more expensive, my investment portfolio is growing faster. The inflation thief is still out there, still nibbling at the edges, but I planted trees, and my orchard is growing. If this video changed how you think about money, do 3 things for me. Hit that like button so YouTube shows this to more people who need to see it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video where I break down exactly which investments to start with as a complete beginner. And drop a comment telling me, are you going to start investing this week? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.